This episode of Profiles in Risk is sponsored by IA Path, unlocking your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com.
This is Profiles in Risk. Hosted by Nick Lamparelli. Every week, we interview those who risk life, limb, fortunes, career, and reputation, and those who work behind the scenes who look to protect and enlighten us about risk. You can find the show notes and other insurance-related content at insnerds.com. That's insnerds.com. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Profiles in Risk. I'm your host, Nick Lamparelli. Today, I am pleased to introduce Randy Schwantz. Randy is the owner of the Wedge Group and author of several books on sales training and sales management for insurance agencies and brokerages. Randy, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like I've known you forever. Ever since I got into insurance, if it was an agency that had pride in itself, rest assured in the library there would be a book on something called The Wedge. And it was written by you, and going through your Amazon account, I can see you've updated it and have several versions of it. So there, you're famous in that regard, but I'd like to start off just in your own words. What does the Wedge Group do?
Yeah, at the high level, we help agency owners develop high performance sales cultures. Both, hire new people and take the existing guys and develop them up and get them growing hard and fast. That's what we do.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your career path? From high school to college, you have a really interesting story. Your entry on LinkedIn for Texas Tech only shows 1 year. So could you just walk us through, how did you get to the point where you got to be a sales trainer?
Yeah, so we might as well clarify that Texas Tech thing. In reality, it was 3 days. I went Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, but I did go. There you have it. So I don't know, the career path is kind of interesting. I grew up on a farm. When I was in high school, I took some sort of aptitude test that said maybe I could be a computer programmer. So I started that and, didn't have the discipline to do anything with it. So when I finally graduated, wasn't prepared to go to college, and I went to work as a construction laborer. It was beautiful, man. Working hard, swinging the axe, swinging the sledgehammer, tying steel, doing not high rise, but they call them concrete tilt ups. A lot of hard work.
In the Texas sun.
In the Texas sun, yeah. And then they went on strike. The carpenters did. So here I am, a laborer, not a union guy, and I couldn't find a job. So then I worked on the railroad and sold Kirby vacuum cleaners and did a lot of things. And then I'd interviewed for one job I wanted to get, and they hired a Texas Tech grad instead of me. That guy didn't work out, and they called me back and go, "You want to come on down?" So I did. And I had a guy named Jerry Stigler. The name of the company is called Moncrief Lenore, as a steel distributorship. And Jerry was the best mentor I've ever had in my life. And he kind of taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about the business, but he taught me a lot about how to be a great mentor. And that was very useful. And anyway, that took me to Dallas, transferred to Dallas, and things were going great. And one day I'm in the parking lot picking up some metal building screws from a distributor of some type. And this guy gets out of his Cadillac and he kind of goes, "Good morning," kind of waves at me. And I see him walk over into a business called the Performance Group. And I was kind of like, I wonder what that is. And so I went over there and said hi to him. And he said, "Come back and talk to a guy that works for me named Dick Cap." Dick Cap happened to be a former Green Bay Packer. He had a big old Super Bowl ring on his finger. Anyway, got to know him and ended up leaving that business and went to work in the sales training business, trying to sell that stuff. It was a miserable year. And then had a couple of more miserable jobs. And then a friend of mine that I knew back when I was in steel business said, "Man, you ought to become like a manufacturer's rep and in the construction business." So anyway, long story short, went to work for a metal fab company. We did stairways, carports, and balcony rails in big apartment complexes. Did that, and it was, I loved it. It was tangible, but I got to use my creativity in terms of design and things like that. And then the real estate bust hit, late 80s, early 90s. And once again, Everything just went to hell in a handbasket. And so another friend had a small advertising agency, and I went to work with him just doing some random sort of marketing sales jobs. And then my wife got pregnant and I needed to make more money. So I just made a deal with him. But along that way, I had started doing some sales training for some of our clients and built a small base. And Lori got pregnant, and I go, you keep that project that I put together. Can I take the sales training clients? And then I was in business. And that's how I got here.
So when did you know that, what was the feeling or the moment that you knew, boom, I love sales? Like this is for me. Was there a particular sale where that occurred, or a particular moment where you just realized that this is going to be what I do for the rest of my life?
Yeah, man, I don't, that's a good one. I don't know that there was a moment, and I got to be honest with you, at some level, it was like I didn't have another choice. I had to be good at it. I couldn't be a manager, couldn't be an operations guy, couldn't be a finance guy, couldn't do any of that. I didn't have the education. And my dad was a sales guy, so I kind of had that identity. I wanted to be like that. And so I just started going for it. And it was brutal. I mean, I had some brutal sales jobs, things that I didn't believe in, didn't make sense to me, and struggled with it. And I think that struggle is ultimately what made me, better, if you will, and made me it's kind of, I am at some level both like a psychologist and an engineer. And I kind of bring the engineer in me sees process, psychology in me see how it affects people. And as those things came together, that's really how the Wedge got developed.
Yeah. So it's grit. I'm curious, is that something that you look for when you're training for sales? Is that something you can teach?
Grit?
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. Did you know I wrote a book called Grit?
No.
Yeah, it's right here. Anyway, it's right over there somewhere. Grit, how to find, hire, and develop real producers. And I think you can create an environment where people who have a grittiness to them, that it pulls it out, or it gives them a chance to really go be all that they are. Where sometimes they were environments where they had that kind of gritty drive, but the environment was more powerful than they were at times. So anyway, I don't know I don't think you can create grit, but man, we sure need to hire it and then create an environment to make the most of it.
I was having a conversation with someone about, I tried to get into production, and it was really hard. There was no purpose around it. There was no mentoring. It was just basically, they threw me out there and I failed.
Right.
And I didn't have the financial ability to support myself during that time. So I don't even know if I personally have grit or not. I think we're going to get into this again at some point, but how important is it to have that mentor, to have someone that can basically say, don't worry, dust yourself off. This is normal. We've all gone through that. And basically lay the foundation and the training for someone to be able to blossom.
Yeah, all you got to do is go look at all your sports heroes. They've all got mentors. They've got specialty coaches, not random guys. So I think it's incredibly important. And, when we, just like with our clients right now, we've got just under 90 agencies on our iWin Agency Growth platform, right? And the reason I wrote the book Grit is because the majority of them are suffering with hiring new producers. That's how they got where they are in the no growth area. And so we've helped them improve the hiring process. And just to tell you a little bit about that, if I can, that I had a client in Fort Worth that I worked with. Well, I'm still working with them. I started working with them in 94. And in 95, I got involved in the hiring process. Between 95 and 2005, that 10-year period of time, I got deeply involved in hiring. And long story short, we end up hitting on 29 out of 34 people. It's an amazing story. So I reverse engineered that and go, because when I first started helping with it, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to look for, didn't know what to ask. I just thought I could do better than what they were doing. And kind of out of it came this whole idea of which maybe this sounds trite or cliche-ish, but really an evidence-based hiring process. So Nick, if you're a basketball player and somebody brought you in and say, give Nick a big contract, he can play ball. Okay, well, let's see him play ball. I'm going to give you a ball. And I'm going to put a guy on you, and you're going to go one-on-one, and then I'm going to watch you shoot, and then I'm going to watch you play defense, and I'm going to watch you cross. I'm going to watch all that stuff. I'll be able to see it with my eyes that you can play ball. And then I'll interview you also to see what you're about and do you fit in the locker room and stuff like that. But I get to see evidence that you can be a ball player. Well, how do you get evidence on a producer? It's an intangible, right? Well, I came up with a whole series of exercises to put them through so we start to get evidence. Anyway, you start to do that, you get amazing results. And somehow I got off track because I'm tying all these things together. But that grit, you were asking about mentoring and coaching. That when you can hire right, it's crucial. But even though you hire right, doesn't mean they're going to be successful. So when you can then put them into an onboarding process that squeezes, if I were your weightlifting coach, I'd be on you screaming at you, not in a mean way, but come on, Nick, push, because you can. And so with a new producer, oftentimes I hire them, they send them off to carrier school. They'll learn a little bit about coverage. They come back. Here's a yellow pages, or go look up something on data.com, start making cold calls. Don't know how to make a cold call. And you learn that carrier, well, we're not going to blame the carriers. You learn that coverage school that there's a lot to know, and that you, compared to the guy who's been doing it for 5, 10, 15 years, you're inordinately ignorant compared to that guy. And so many things we do actually crushes confidence rather than builds confidence. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then when we start to look at an onboarding process of newbies, it's A, get them real clear on their goals, B, get them really clear on their value proposition. And so now here's the next piece. What makes the Wedge work is we help agencies create proactive service platforms. Not we have a lot of good service, but platform to where you could name every one of them. They're very distinct. It's not just capabilities like loss control or claims management or tools like Xywave or Succeed, but we're pulling out of that and ending up with a bunch of little tiny bricks, each one with a name, building a platform. Well, when you do that, now that young producer, we can help them think, what are the proactive services you do that the income is not doing, is where that prospect's being underserved. And we can get a new producer going fast. We can get them getting BORs in 90 days. Well, in the old days, it's like, you got a BOR? Like, wow, how'd you do that? No, dude, we get the young guys out doing it. Because, go back to what you said, system, coaching, mentoring, it's a well-defined platform. It's proven. And so rather than this random chaotic piece of poo-poo that most people have to go through, man, we squeeze them right down the tube.
Yeah. I want to get more into the Wedge. First, before we do that quickly, how did you jump into the insurance part of it? So it sounds like in your career that you started to have an aptitude for sales. You enjoyed it. You wanted to do more of it. But it didn't sound like it was initially in insurance. How did it become more insurance-based?
And we'll get right back to this episode right after a brief message from our sponsor. I am back with Chris Stanley, founder of IAPath. Chris, IAPath can handle individual as well as corporate adjuster trainings. What is the typical class size?
Nick, with the technology that exists for hosting classes online, we can hold hundreds of students per class. But at IAPath, we wanted it to be more personable. If we're going to sign off saying a student is competent, then we need to actually get to know the student. And we can't get to know the student if there are hundreds of people per class. That's why we keep our classes to under 20 registered students, and our certified partners are confident that we know the student and that student knows their stuff.
Learn to write auto, heavy truck, and other claims types with IAPath's online trainings. Unlock your adjusting superpowers. Go to iapath.com.
I want to get more into the Wedge. First, before we do that quickly, how did you jump into the insurance part of it? So it sounds like in your career that you started to have an aptitude for sales. You enjoyed it. You wanted to do more of it. But it didn't sound like it was initially in insurance. How did it become more insurance-based?
Yeah, so full disclosure, I've never sold a dime's worth of insurance, ever. I'm not an insurance sales guy.
But you teach insurance agents.
I teach insurance agents. So, if you hang out in Rome long enough, maybe you'll learn how to speak Italian, right? So what happened was, and here's kind of an interesting story. When I was in the construction business, what I would do is I'd go around to a job shack, pick up a set of blueprints, figure out how much they needed, materials, make a proposal, hand it to them, and then you cross your fingers, hope you get the deal. A lot like insurance. Go meet with a prospect, get the policies, find a coverage gap, market it, bring it back, present it to them, and hope you get the deal. And I was just dumb and stupid, Nick. I mean, I had no clue what was happening to me until one day I'm listening to my boss had somebody on his speakerphone. And this guy is dog cussing him. I mean, we're in the construction business, so it's not unusual, but just dog cussing him. Mike, you SOB, blah, 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 MF or GD, you know, it's just going on. And then the conversation was over, and I was like in shock. And then I said to my boss, Mike, isn't that Jimmy your biggest client? He goes, yeah. I said, he was dog cussing you, man. He sounds like he's mad. He goes, nah, we do this every time. Every time he sends me a set of blueprints, I give him a proposal. He calls me back. He cusses me out. I lower it by 5%. He gets what he wants. What he doesn't know is I jacked it up 5% so I could lower it 5%. And that's the game. And all of a sudden, like epiphany, boom, that's the game. And so once I figured out that's the game, it changed how I started using the sales training that I had at that point. And back then, I was, there was a sales training franchise out there called Sandler. I love Sandler. Sandler was the first guy that told it the way it was and was tough. And instead of feature benefit, he got down to going after pain. And so I loved it. And so I was taking that, and then I started to incorporate more of that and got better at it. Well, when when all hell broke loose with the real estate industry going down, Charles Keating and the Savings Loan Trust and everyone went bankrupt. And then I started teaching some of our client stuff. Well, one of my first 3 clients, really one of the first 5 clients that I got from cold calling was an insurance agency. And so I'd been working with this guy, his name Pat Bonds here in Dallas, for about, 4, 5, 6 months. And then one day he takes me to lunch. He said, hey, Randy, I got some advice for you. Really? What's that? He said, I think you ought to focus on insurance. Really? Why? He said, I got 3 reasons. He said, number 1, we don't get a lot of good sales training. Most of our training is technical training. I like your stuff. I think other people would too. And this is pre-Wedge days even. And he said, number 2, you're not going to find any internal competition. Nobody wants to really do this role. And then he said, number 3, they make a lot of money. They can afford to pay you well. And then he told me about George Nordhaus out on the West Coast, who at that point in his life drove a Rolls Royce from all the money he made off of working with insurance agencies. And so I called George, who's the nicest man in the world. And, he's still serving our industry. And he goes, write an article. If I like it, I'll publish it. And I wrote the first article I ever wrote. It's called The Buck Stops Here, The Art and Science of Doing Deals. And he published it. And I picked up a couple more clients, and then boom, that became my specialty.
It's fantastic. You're not the first one to bring up Sandler sales. So I will put that on the show notes. That's come up a couple times.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Let me tell you politely also where it leaves us off. Almost all training. In the other room, I've got a bookshelf with over 200 books on selling. And here's the thing, Nick, that they all have in common. In essence, they all say that if we'll build relationship, if we'll probe, if we'll find problems and pain, if we'll solve that pain, that we'll get rewarded. What none of those people deal with is that third party, the bad boy incumbent. And that is the crux, or maybe we should say that's the killer of a lot of salespeople who build those relationships, do good needs analysis. They come back with great proposals. They present, and they feel so good about themselves. And then that bad boy incumbent comes back in and matches it and keeps it.
And that's the whole background. That's the metaphor of the wedge.
Yeah. You got to drive a wedge when you're prospecting incumbent.
Yeah. So you're going after a client who has an agent or broker. There's no conflict between the client and the agent, and you need to find that small wedge to be able to find, or a small pore to stick that wedge in, and figure out how are you going to separate the customer from the incumbent agent when there's not a large conflicting problem that's like very obvious to the client.
Yeah, in fact, there's hardly ever a problem that the client feels. And so now you go back to another book I read. It was called, one of the most magnificent concepts. I think this concept personally has made me $10 million, at least. It's the concept of there's two parts of the brain, front part, back part. Front part's active memory, that like if something's bothering me, I feel it, I'll tell you about it. But in the back is this latent memory, and that's where all these conditions, all these things that we learned how to put up with are stored. They become highly predictable what those conditions are that buyers have. And so then once again, when I've got my proactive service platform, it's the proactive services I do that the incumbent doesn't do, is where that buyer is being underserved and has pain even when they don't know it. And so it becomes a very predictable process to get that pain out and get it blamed upon the incumbent, driving that big wedge, not a little wedge, to where the buyer at some point feels like you've been taking advantage of me. You're not doing that. You're not doing that. You're not doing that. And I thought I could trust you. Now I don't know that I can. Wedge in. And then that shifts the momentum of the sales call. And look, dude, I can pull up dozens and dozens and dozens of testimonials where people are talking about their closing ratios going from the 30s to the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that now they're getting either way over half or all their business by BOR. And there's only one way to do that. And that you got to be great at conveying the difference and getting the buyer to see the incumbent's not doing their job. Hence the wedge.
Yeah. For the listeners, BOR that don't know what a BOR is, it's a broker of record letter, and that's simply the agent gets a piece of paper that says all of their accounts now belong to this new agent.
Just take over.
Yeah, you don't have no applications or anything. You just take them over. It's the simplest way to acquire a business. So I want to, so the Wedge is a philosophy of sales training. So you come into an agency, you're teaching these agents the Wedge, but doesn't it require continuous training? You had mentioned an athlete having specialized training.
Right.
For someone that's in sales, aren't they like an athlete? Doesn't even the Wedge or any other superior philosophical method to conduct sales, isn't it something you just have to keep training yourself over and over and over?
Absolutely. And see, that's so the old school would say, hey, we sent you to training one time. What's your problem? In fact, I used to get angry. I'm not the angry man I used to be. I'm still trying to be polarizing, but I'm not angry. But I used to get mad. Like some agency owner would send a young kid off to the Wedge training, and then he'd come back, and the guy would be on fire and write a lot of business. And then after about 6 months, all the old habits of the existing sales culture took over. So I'd be like talking to a guy, say, who else are you going to send? He goes, well, I sent Charlie, and Charlie did good for about 4 or 5 months, but he's back to the same old Charlie. And I'm thinking like, well, don't you understand why? I mean, you took him out of this great place in a sense. It's just like if a obese guy that wanted to lose weight and he worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken, he goes off to Jenny Craig for some weight loss training, and then he comes back to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's just not a good place to lose weight. And they're not a great place.
That's a great metaphor.
Yeah. So it's so the answer is yes. You have to train. And then we teach a sales meeting model. Most sales meetings in agencies are what I call a spreadsheet liars club meeting, right? Get out the spreadsheet. Hey, Nick, what are you working on here? Okay, Nick, tell me more about it. All right, Nick, what do you think your chances are, Nick? Okay, you have a carrier lined up? You need any help, Nick? And that's about it. So Nick says, yeah, I'm doing fine. No, I don't need any help. Yes, I have a good carrier, got a relationship. I think if I do this, do that, I'll win the business. All right, next. Spreadsheet liars club meeting. Doesn't mean you're a liar, but you're not getting anything out of it that's worthwhile, right? So then if you flip that on its head, and instead of asking that of you, Nick, I put the incumbent of the account that you got an appointment with tomorrow afternoon in the room with us. No, not literally, but there's a chair. That's where we put the incumbent. And Nick, right now, that guy's got your money. So let me ask you a question, Nick. Do you think this account would be better off with you than that guy? And then you would say what?
Me?
Yeah, good. Then I got to go, why? And now through my training, jujitsu, I got to sit there and take what you say and start to map it out and get solid black and white things rather than a lot of, well, it's my experience and, it's my knowledge. And so I train sales leaders all the time that when somebody says, well, it's my knowledge. Well, root word of knowledge is to know. So you must know something the incumbent doesn't know. What do you know? What do you know how to do? And just keep pushing and make you define what you do better. And so that's like weightlifting too, only it's weightlifting of the brain. You're taking that big old gray matter and keep squeezing on it, making it stronger, make you stronger at defining and defending how you're better than your competition. So when you train in the skill of how to deliver a wedge, do a vision box, do the rehearsal technique, you get that down where you got that down, and then you're made to define what you do and how you do it better. You put those two together, man, it's a powerful cocktail, baby. And that combination is what causes a lot of people to win. And a secondary cool benefit is if I'm the sales manager and I'm working you, making you define and defend, I'm getting your best work out on the table to go beat that guy. Well, what's everybody else in the room learning? Your best work. And then I get Bob's best work. And I get Jim's best work. And I get Sally's best work. And now, instead of all this stuff about, well, we do best practices. Oh, come on. Best practice is just a way of saying we do what's average and it's good. This is like take you to the mat every time. And it's like, God, it's fun when you have people that have ambition, and it's brutal when you got a bunch of old retired in place farts. Yeah, it's the way it is.
What in terms of sales culture, could you rattle off a few things that you sort of you would rank as things that you would see if you went into an agency that had a top-notch sales culture? What are they doing right?
Yeah, so one thing, they'd probably have a big old board up on the wall with all the producers listed, new business commission goals, and it'd be updated. A lot of people have that chart. It's not updated, so it's updated. Boom. Everybody knows how much new business everybody's writing. There's no secrets, right? We get it out there. That's number one. Number two, goal setting is not hey, what are you going to write for me this year? Goal setting goes in depth. I mean, you get it. It's almost like financial planning, moving all the way out to what does it take for you to be a millionaire, a multimillionaire, reverse engineering all the way back down to now how much you have to write this year to make that happen. You've got new people in the room. In other words, they're bringing in new talent. A great sales culture has new talent. They're always bringing in new talent. And when I say always, I mean, it's like somebody, depends on how big the firm is, a couple of people a year, some firms, many more than that. And it's just got this energy around, when you ask, what do you do and how do you do it? That it's not the whole, well, we've been in business for 60 years and we got a lot of really good people and great market relationships. It's you're really drilling down on quantifiable stuff to go beat your competition with. Stuff like that. I could keep going, but that's some of it.
You brought up, this is a great segue to number 3 on your list was new talent. I can't even count on my hands how many conversations I've had with folks that are in the industry that says, we are in a crisis. We have had a lot of agencies who have made a lot of money over the years, and they have done a very poor job of bringing in that new talent. So It's very top heavy. A lot of agency owners or executives.
They're old.
Rainmakers, they're old. Let's call them older, close to retirement. And it's almost, I talked to one agent who said it's actually at some stage, it's not even in their best interest to bring somebody in. It's just too difficult for them to make the numbers work at their age and, what they're trying to do.
Yeah, which is why.
Go ahead.
Which is why the venture capital firms have come in and swooped in on this industry like crazy. But probably last year I think maybe 565 agencies, and they're not all little rinky-dink shops. I mean, we're talking about some big shops, some medium-sized shops. They're buying like crazy because they know that Mr. Big is not going to invest his own money. And Mr. Big knows that he can get, 7.5, 8 times EBITDA off his, he's going to get a big paycheck unless somebody else have the problem. And so that's kind of the crux that the industry's in right now. And thank God there's not everybody sold out to the venture capital firms. And thank God that even the venture capital firms, some of them are trying to get back in the hiring process. I honestly don't see a lot of that, but they're talking about it. But there's that mid-tier agencies that's, 5-man shop. They're sitting there going, we want to be around and we want to get back in the business. So I see a lot of it going on, at least in our client base anyway.
So how do you hire a new producer? What do you even look for? What should an agency owner that's interested in perpetuating their business, they want to be around for the long haul, they know they didn't do the appropriate investments in the past, but they're ready to turn the corner. What should they look for? What should they do? Well,
here's something that's way oversimplified, and yet it's true. You take that Mr. Agency owner, we'll call him 50-year-old guy, right? Who cares? But he's got a client base of 100 clients. He's got a staff of 15 to 25 people. He's been in this place he's in. He's got so many kids within just the reach of his fingertip that he's never identified, asked about, or thought about that would love to have the lifestyle that he has. Now, can they all step into that pair of shoes? Of course not. But please don't tell me he's the only guy in his city that can do what he does, right? There's talent everywhere. And so the first thing we do is we go through just kind of a take off your rose-colored shades and start thinking about who's in the deal. And we have exercises, descriptions, and then ways to start that leveraging process to get people coming to them. I've got a number of clients that have never used a recruiter, headhunter, any of that sort of stuff, and they got more talent than you can shake a stick at. All right, so that's number one. You got to go find them. Once you found them, then you got to go recruit them into the business. So recruiting, we kind of have them break it down into like a three-step story about why insurance. Number one, why the industry? I mean, it's old, it's stable, it's going to be around forever. Why your agency? What you believe in, and then why you, and how you, as a sales leader, wants to help hire people that want to be multimillionaires, and you've got a process to help them get there. So, you're sitting there having to attract talent away from, pharmaceutical, manufacturing, whatever it would be. Why would they want to come to work for you, a small business? Because, and some people go, Randy, you're awfully crass talking about money all the time. Well, look, money's just a tool. That's all it is. Money buys freedom. I'm not greedy. If we didn't have to have it to buy cars, universities, weddings, to be able to have great retirements, I could care less about money. But that's how you buy all that stuff, right? And so I'm selling that this is an unbelievable place to make a lot of money, become a millionaire, multimillionaire. And you're probably not going to get that at those other places. So great industry, great agency, and I'm going to be a great sales leader and coach to help you get there. So now we just recruited them in. They go, okay, how do I talk to you guys? Then you got to have a good cop, bad cop. And the bad cop's the guy who's got to really do the assessment and push back and push hard to find out if this person's for real. And they're looking for about 5 things. Can you deal with rejection? If you can't, you're out. Are you driven? Financially driven, personally driven? Do you have a motive for wanting to do something big? Are you smart? Are you coachable? Are you good at relationships? And so through that, I was telling you earlier, through the evidence-based hiring process, we put them through exercises that make them jump over those hurdles to find out if they've got that. And that equals grit, right? That's gritty. When you got all that stuff, you're gritty. And then you hire them, and then you do the onboarding process. Strong goals, differentiation, learn your cold call deal, build out your niche, learn your sales process, and then get on the phone and start calling and setting appointments. And then you come to our sales meetings, and then we're going to train. We're going to keep training. We're going to keep training. Sales meeting, push. And it's like, see, I love Nick Saban. I got a man crush on him. I love Bill Belichick. I got a man crush on him. I love Krzyzewski. I got a man crush on him. Those guys are big time winners. They're big time recruiters, but they're big time developers. They have a process and they drive the process. And what's interesting about Nicky, I like to call him Nicky. My buddy Nicky, in the mid-90s, when he was at Michigan State, I believe, he got together with a psychologist there on the staff at the university, and they kind of came up with this thing that they, Nikki kind of branded as the process. And what his psychology guy says, quit focusing on winning. Focus on the process, focusing on developing people. Great process gets great results. Always has, always will.
Hey, for the listeners, I will share an article in the show notes. I think it's from ESPN, and it's about Bill Belichick, and it talks about just that. It's several people that are very familiar with him, and it's exactly the way you described it. One in particular said, that saying, "Don't swallow the small, don't sweat the small stuff." Well, that doesn't apply to Bill Belichick.
Right.
And every time there's been the Malcolm Butler interception in Seattle, they practiced that play. They did it twice during the regular season because Belichick thought at some point someone might try that play. And during the Super Bowl, the light bulb went off in Malcolm Butler's head, and he said, "I've seen this," and instinctively reacted and intercepted the ball.
Yeah.
And so I love your message because I hear this from others who are successful, and it's constant training. Keep pushing yourself. That is a wonderful message. And I just want to do a gentle segue to non-producers and training for them, specifically sales training for them. Not to necessarily become producers, but to become better at like you were mentioning, the wedge, better at asking the appropriate questions for people that are calling in, or customers that might be beginning to develop a gripe about something. How do you feel about sales training for non-producers?
I mean, I feel training for all people everywhere on the planet, right? I mean, we're I took some golf lessons from a guy, and he brings a martial arts thing to golf. And as he's doing all his stuff with his sensei would say, nothing's either needed. It's not hard. You're either trained or not trained, right? Golf is not hard. Either you're trained or not trained. And that just keeps, like, selling is not hard. You're either trained or not trained. And most people are not trained. So now you go back to quote unquote non-selling salespeople. They're selling all the time. They're selling underwriters. They're selling each other.
Exactly.
They're selling staff to come to work there. They're selling the retention of clients. They're cross-selling. And I'm no Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, but man, do I believe everything I do has got a process, everything, and I can defend it, why it got there. So the psychology and the process, right? So a lot of times when you get into the internal staff, you're trying to work them through, like, well, why us? How are we different? How are we better? And they've been asked to drink the Kool-Aid. The Kool-Aid is, well, in fact, I was talking to a lady out, and I'm not going to say where in case she hears this. But I was asking her about the firm and how they differentiate. She said, well, we've had a 125-year history in this town. And I'm sitting there going, that might build some esprit de corps, but from a differentiation perspective, who gives a crap? I mean, literally, who cares? And I want to promise you, your prospects don't care. They care about them, not you. So how do you differentiate is, and I keep coming back to our proactive services platform, really define what you're going to do for your clients in such a black and white way that everybody knows what it is, they can communicate it. And then that becomes at the heart of your training. When you got that, now that's where you have leverage, and then you can go help people, move them, persuade them, influence them to that, whether they're griping or they're a new opportunity coming in.
Yeah, I love that message. I really do. I'd like to transition to learn a little bit something more about you. We try to do this in every podcast, try to make it not 100% business, but we'll do a little bit of personal stuff too. So, Randy, when you aren't working, what do you enjoy doing?
We just moved from Dallas to Raleigh, North Carolina. And I've got 4 daughters. The youngest is, so we're empty nesters. So youngest is going to school at Duke, playing volleyball. So when I'm not working, I'm watching her play volleyball during volleyball season. The rest of the season, we moved to a golf course, and I bought a golf cart, and I like to go over there and toot around and play golf, kind of at my own leisure. And then this is kind of really boring work, but I love it. Like, here's a book, like this book's on storytelling made easy. And so to see the psychology in movies and storytelling and great marketers is what I do when I'm not working. And one of my friends, his boss, he was saying to his boss, who was up there like late Saturday night, if you had a work-life balance coach, they'd be unhappy with you. And he kind of said back, this is my work. This is my play. I mean, it's like, I love what I do. And so, a little golf, a little volleyball. And then I love studying and learning.
Yeah, I love that too. Do you have any tools that you use to stay organized or productive?
Yeah. So, it's probably a bad term, but I eat my own dog food. In other words, I developed a CRM system for agencies that I absolutely believe trumps all the rivals. And it's amazing. It helped me keep organized with my clients and my buyers. It's got my goals in there. It's got my written service timeline for my clients. I can carry it with me everywhere I go. It's on my iPhone. I use that, and it integrates with Outlook. And that's what I use to keep organized.
Well, let me guess. It's also good for producers.
It's it's awesome for producers. I'm glad you brought that up. But can we talk about that? With a little tongue in cheek, the way you said that, and I dig it. But man, you think about it, if you're a producer, don't you want all your differentiation right at your fingertips? Absolutely. Don't you want to know everything that there is to know about your competition right at your fingertips?
Absolutely.
Don't your goals right at your fingertips? Don't you want all your red hot introductions, the people that your clients and who they can introduce you to? It's like everything that I coach somebody to do, it's built systemically into this technology platform. So it just becomes easy. And then sales leaders, quit running Spreadsheet Liars Club meeting, run these great crisp sales meetings. And look, and it's all built in there. So it's kind of like this whole technology to drive agency growth. So, you set me up, but you didn't know I was going to say that, did you?
I didn't. And is the CRM something that's commercially available? Or is it something that listeners could maybe take a peek at via the Wedge?
Yeah. So if you go to the wedge.net, it's a part of the I1 agency growth system. So, it's a combination, our deal is a combination of training, technology, and coaching. Because which one do you want to leave out? You want to leave out training? No. Do you need technology? Yeah. Do you need coaching to help get us over the hump? Yeah. So that's kind of that whole platform.
Completely. Yeah. Okay. So final question I ask all of our guests that come on. Besides all of the books that you have written, and besides the one you just mentioned on Storytelling Made Easy, are there any particular books that you would recommend that you found to be very influential in it sounds like your business and personal lives are very intertwined, but something that you found very influential that you would recommend to the listeners?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of Tony Robbins, and when I think of that, of all the hundreds and hundreds of books I've read, the one that was most influential in getting me over the hump was his first book called Unlimited Power. And when you come from a redneck farm boy background, you went to school for 3 days, you leave Lubbock, Texas, you go to Dallas, Texas. It's a big city, bright lights, big cars. Everybody drove a Mercedes Benz, it felt like. Everybody went to school at SMU and was wearing polo shirts. Back then, SMU was a big deal. So, man, I didn't feel like I fit in. I mean, my identity was, I don't belong here. But deep down inside, in my heart, my soul, my gut, I wanted to, but man, I just didn't believe. And so that Unlimited Power kind of, I read that probably 3 or 4 or 5 times, mapped it out, wrote it out. I think and that book is 25 years old, but man, it's just as powerful today as it ever was.
Good selection. Great selection. Randy, this has been phenomenal. Such a wonderful conversation to have with you. If the listeners would like to reach you, how can they do that?
Yeah. So, you can always email me, randy@thewedge.net. I get my own emails and respond to them. And then if you're interested in the I1 agency growth system, you can email me about that or go to the website, thewedge.net. And start doing research on that. Our public workshops. We know we do public workshops around the country. The Wedge. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff out there.
Fantastic. I will put all of that information on the show notes. And wow, the time has flown by. Thank you so much for carving out time in your day to discuss. And it's an honor.
It's my honor, man. You're good.
Again, I'll say it again. Being in a successful agency for many years ago, yours was the first book that I saw on that one producer's library, and I said I need to get that book. So you've definitely made an impact all of these years. It was an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Nick.
My guest this week has been Randy Schwantz. Thanks again, Randy.